right, let's jump right in. Let's say you're bringing home exactly $3,000 a month after taxes in 2026. Now, with the cost of rent, groceries, and let's be honest, even a basic cup of coffee feeling substantially higher than they used to, a lot of people are asking a very simple, very stressed out question. Is that actually enough? Is it enough to live on, save something for your future, and not feel completely broke literally every single month? Well, in this explainer, we're going to build out a real, step-by-step budget using genuine 2026 cost data. No made-up numbers, no fluff. By the end of our time together, you'll have an actual, concrete framework that you can copy and adjust for your own life. $3,000. I really want you to anchor your mind to this specific number. It's a super common monthly take-home pay, but it's also a number where the margin for error can feel, frankly, razor thin. We're going to figure out exactly where every single dollar of that $3,000 needs to go. Can you actually thrive on this? Can you build a real emergency fund without totally sacrificing your lifestyle? We're going to map the whole shebang out so you can see exactly how it works in today's economy. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, a location reality check. Second, the blueprint breakdown. Third, rethinking 50-30-20. And finally, customizing your budget. Starting off with part 1, location reality check. Does $3,000 actually work everywhere? Okay, before we crunch the actual numbers, we need to address the elephant in the room. $3,000 a month goes very, very differently depending on geography. In a major coastal hub, think New York or LA, a single person's cost of living can easily run between $4,500 and $8,500 a month just for a basic lifestyle. So $3,000 genuinely isn't enough there unless you're willing to make some serious compromises, like living with a small army of roommates. However, this budget we're building today, it's designed for a realistic mid-size US metro area or a lower-cost city. That's where $3,000 is a totally solid, realistic baseline. If you live somewhere more expensive, the percentages we're about to discuss will absolutely still apply, but you'll just need to pull different levers to make the math work. Keep that location reality in your back pocket as we go. Moving right along to part 2, the blueprint breakdown, a category-by-category look at our $3,000. First up is housing, and guys, this is the absolute make-or-break category, $1,050. This represents exactly 35% of your income. Now, this covers your rent plus your utilities combined. Based on actual 2026 data for a modest one-bedroom or a shared apartment in a mid-sized metro, rent alone is typically sitting between $800 and $1,100, with utilities adding another $120 to $180. Housing is quite literally where budgets either break or survive. Like we said earlier, if you're in a higher cost area, this is the exact number you'd need a roommate to help you hit. Next on the list, groceries. $350, which comes out to about 12% of the budget. Real 2026 data puts average grocery spending for one person right in that $350 to $460 range, though obviously that depends heavily on your diet and where you shop. But hitting this $350 mark is completely doable if you're consistently cooking at home and not relying on those expensive takeout delivery apps. It takes some serious discipline for sure, but the math works. You hold the power here. For transportation, we're allocating $200, or roughly 7%. This is going to cover your gas, your insurance, and basic maintenance if you drive, or a monthly transit pass if you're taking the bus or train. Now, quick side note, this is an absolutely crucial distinction. This budget assumes you have a paid-off or a very, very modest vehicle. If you're currently paying off a hefty car loan on top of these running costs, that payment would need its own entirely separate line item. All right, it's like a giant puzzle, and here is the entire master blueprint put together. Beyond housing, food, and transit, let's break down how the rest of every single dollar is assigned. Health costs and minimum debt payments both sit at $150. Though hey, if you're completely debt-free, that $150 goes straight to savings, which is a massive win. We've bundled phone and internet into $90 and gave subscriptions $100. That's enough for your favorite streaming services or an occasional treat, but definitely not a blank check. Personal care and miscellaneous gets $100, because let's be real, pretending life fits into perfectly neat categories is a total fantasy. You always need a catch-all for clothes or random toiletries. Then, we protect a massive $750 total for your future. An incredible $450 goes to a short-term emergency fund, while $300 goes straight to long-term retirement investing. Finally, notice that little $60 buffer at the bottom? That's a crucial 2% cushion for when life inevitably goes off script. Add all 11 of these categories up, and boom, it lands exactly on $3,000. Part 3. Rethinking 50-30-20, and why the classic rule fails in 2026. So to understand why it fails, we first have to understand what it actually is. The 50-30-20 rule is a super traditional budgeting guideline. It basically suggests you should allocate 50% of your take-home pay to your absolute needs, 30% to your wants and lifestyle, and 20% to your savings and investments. It's clean, it's incredibly simple, and honestly, it's been taught in personal finance for years. But here's the catch. Our real-world budget completely shatters that old rule. When we add up our absolute needs from that blueprint, housing, groceries, transportation, phone, health, and minimum debt, it comes out to roughly $1,990. That is 66% of our income, nowhere near 50%. We're also putting a very healthy 25% into savings, which unfortunately forces our wants category to shrink all the way down to just 7%. Our 2026 reality isn't 50-30-20, it looks way more like 66-7-25. And no, that is not a mistake in the math, that is just reality. On $3,000 a month with today's cost of living, needs genuinely take up a bigger slice of the pie, forcing the wants category to shrink so you can fiercely protect your savings rate.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, Customizing Your Budget, Adapting the Blueprint for You.
Because personal finance is, well, personal. If your situation doesn't match our exact averages, here's how you pull the levers of this budget. First, if your rent is higher than that $1,050 mark because of where you live, the first place you compensate is by cutting from subscriptions and personal spending. You absolutely must protect your savings line as long as you possibly can. Second, what if you have no debt? Incredible. You take that $150 we allocated for minimum payments and you split it between your emergency fund and retirement. Doing that boosts your overall savings rate to an amazing 30%. But third, what if you have high interest debt, like a nagging credit card balance? In that case, you might want to temporarily reduce your retirement contributions to just the bare minimum needed to get your employer match. Take the rest of that money and aggressively redirect it toward paying down that high interest debt. Why? Because high interest debt usually costs you far, far more than what normal investment growth is going to earn you.
If you take away nothing else, remember this slide. This is the core philosophy of the entire framework, and honestly, it matters so much more than any single dollar amount we've talked about today. Needs first, protect your savings rate as aggressively as your situation allows, and let your short-term wants be the flexible category that absorbs the pressure of inflation and living costs. Protect your future, not your streaming services.
So, I want to leave you with a provocative question to chew on today. What does your actual needs, wants, and savings split look like right now? Seriously, are you closer to that classic 50-30-20, or are you living the 66-7-25 reality we just outlined? Take some time today, crunch your own numbers using this framework, and see exactly where you stand. Understanding exactly where your money goes is literally the very first step in taking control of it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep mastering those numbers.